make excuses for myself, but I'm not. It's not just something that I can get out of my head. My brain goes from 0 to 160 miles per hour in the blink of an eye. I'm stuck in a race car that I simply cannot get out of, begging for them to stop speeding. But instead, I'm begging my mind. It feels like tabs continually open on my computer. They won't go away when you try to close them. More and more just open up in my mind. More and more thoughts that I can't control. I try to fix everything all at once, and I can't. But that's not what the voices in my head tell me. No matter what people say, I can't force them out. It's not that simple. When you're not allowed to get proper medication, you search for anything to help. But it doesn't stop completely. I feel like a failure sometimes. I can't sleep because I'm constantly trying to come up with endless solutions to fight my worries. When I'm like this, don't tell me that I need to calm down. Don't tell me that I can control it. If it did, I would have figured that out by now. Help me see that it's only temporary.
As someone who has dealt personally with anxiety, I realize that there are a lot of myths about its causes, and those myths can lead to a lot of hurtful statements that can make you feel very alone. But anxiety is hardly an isolated issue, with over 40 million adults suffering from it in the United States alone. As that number rises, the question of what causes anxiety becomes even more urgent. Through my research, I found that genetics, environment, trauma, and substance use can all contribute. However, almost every anxiety disorder starts with genes. The genetic basis for anxiety is hardly a new discovery, dating back to the days of Hippocrates. But with our ability to conduct long-term studies, we found that anxiety really does run in families. Although the exact percentages vary depending on the diagnosis, many forms of anxiety, including panic disorder, have up to a 31% prevalence among first-degree relatives of the sufferer. And with molecular genetics, researchers can go beyond what they can see and identify specific genes in connection with anxiety. For example, chromosomes 2q and 15q have been connected to panic disorder, and certain serotonin transmitter genes have been connected to panic disorder and generalized anxiety. Yet, to fully understand the causes of anxiety, we also have to look to environmental factors, which are what bring out the anxious genes that an individual may have. First, we have to consider the larger social environment, and with today's more choices, we also get more anxiety. One telling study found that today's high schooler experienced the same level of anxiety as the average psychiatric patient in the 1950s. While our culture can promote anxiety, it is usually family dynamics and daily interactions that honestly predict whether someone will experience anxiety or not. One study of 1,200 18-year-olds found that parental conflict increased anxiety and guilt. And on the other hand, overprotective parents also produced more anxious children. But even with the most perfect environment, traumatic experiences can still be the catalyst for anxiety. Trauma comes in many different forms, from physical abuse to wartime to divorce and death. In the United States, the biggest problem right now is childhood abuse. One clinical study found that childhood trauma literally changes the body's neurobiology and the way it reacts to stress. A New Zealand study found that 49% of older adults still suffered from anxiety brought on from childhood abuse. Wartime is another common form of trauma and its resulting anxiety. Veterans often experience PTSD, yet even there's variation. For those who had more direct exposure to combat or a past history of anxiety, their chances of having PTSD dramatically increase. On the other hand, veterans with strong social support often avoided all forms of anxiety. Finally, substance use can also be a cause of anxiety, even the medications that are supposed to help it. Multiple research studies have demonstrated that people with anxiety are more likely to turn to drugs or alcohol to cope. So sometimes it's hard to tell whether it was the cause or just reaction. On the other hand, it's also been demonstrated that substances can cause feelings of anxiety. When deciding whether to take a substance, it's important to realize that sometimes they can actually lead to more anxiety, not less. Anxiety is a complex puzzle that takes many forms and has many causes and solutions. So when looking for a solution, we have to look at all of the causes, from genetics to substance use. But above all, we have to focus on the facts and let go of any myths or blame that we've been holding. We have to realize that anxiety is not a choice, and that to find a solution, we have to work together. By starting conversations about the root causes of anxiety, we can work toward better solutions and treatments. The truth is, anxiety affects everyone and does not discriminate. It could be your family, your friends, or yourself. And by working together, we can get to the end of anxiety for good. It is everyone's problem. And by exploring the real causes, we can find a solution for everyone.